Hi there. It's good to be here again to serve you with this week's edition of Premium Times podcast. Hi there. It's good to be here again to serve you with this week's edition of Premium Times podcast. I'm your host, Titi Lokwe Fadare. Months back, it was Abubakar Shekau, one of the enemies of the state, that was killed. Last week, another state enemy, the leader of the Islamic State West Africa province, Abu Musab al-Banawi, was killed. This week, Nigeria saw the end of his successor, Malam Bako. The National Security Advisor to the President, Babagana Monguno, said Malam Bako was killed along with a prominent member of the ISWAP. The deadly group, the deadly group, the, the, the deadly group is now contending with a leadership crisis, largely due to issues of trusts, conflicts, mutual suspicion, and other things among them. The war is far from won, but this indeed is a win for Nigeria. Meanwhile, the terrorists are not letting up. This week, the Nigerian Railway Corporation confirmed that suspected bandits destroyed a portion of the Abuja to Kaduna railway track with explosives, forcing a disruption of train services on the route. Don't mind them. They meant to say terrorists. The, ex- the explosives, the agency said, damaged the rail track at a spot between Duse and Regina, an area that had recorded numerous bandit attacks along Kaduna Abuja highway. Again, don't say again, don't mind them. They meant to say terrorists. A former senator representing Kaduna Central District, Sheo Sani, was among the passengers who escaped with their lives. Again, this is a pointer to show that insecurity is no respecter of status. It's like the rain, it doesn't discriminate. In other news, the Nigerian government said it has established a link between Sunday Adeyemo and a suspected financier of terrorism. Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, said the government's findings show that a company controlled by Mr. Adeyemo transferred 12.75 million naira to another controlled by Abdullahi Usman, who is suspected of financing terrorism in Nigeria. Mr. Malami said Alba Bako and Sons and its promoter Abdullahi Umar Usman are suspects in the ongoing joint terrorism financing investigation. This, he says, shows the nexus between separatist agitation, terrorism financing, and disruptions of peace in the country. He noted that the major financier of the fugitive and separatists were found was found to be a federal lawmaker in the National Assembly. He also said Sunday Igboho is linked to 43 bank accounts in 9 banks. How true are these claims? Well, we are watching closely. Well, we're watching closely. On other on the other hand, the Nigerian government has begun its case against Nnamdi Kanu, blaming the Nnamdi Kanu-led indigenous people of Biafra and its military wing, the Eastern Security Network, for some violent attacks in Lagos and other parts of the country during the NSAS protests last year. Attorney General Abubakar Malami said Mr. Kanu, through his online broadcast, instigated the large-scale destruction of public assets during the NSAS protests, particularly in Lagos, as well as southeast and south-south regions. He said Mr. Kanu Mr. Kanu set up the ECN and armed wing. He said Mr. Kanu set up the ECN, an armed wing of and an armed wing. He said Mr. Kanu set up the ECN, an armed wing of IPOB, to carry out subversive activities against Nigeria. The IPOB leader, who is currently standing trial on an amended 7-count charge before the Federal High Court in Abuja, was brought to court this week for the first time since he was rearrested in Kenya after he jumped bail. He pleaded not guilty. The spike in food prices the spike in food prices reached the spike in food prices reached the presidency. The spike in food prices reached the presidency next year. Nigerian taxpayer will have to pay twice as much to feed their president and vice president. The taxpayers may remain at the same income level that has left many of them struggling daily to buy food. The allocation for the meals of Mr. Buhari and Mr. Osibajo's office was pegged at 457 million naira in the proposed 2022 budget. The doubled allocation from last year showed that the top offices have mirrored the food inflation, which at the food in- the food inflation, which is at 22.95% in March, and reached its highest level in 12 years. But the same cannot be said of the earnings of an average Nigerian. Amidst the rise in inflation and unemployment, millions of working millions of working Nigerians have retained the same income, and the minimum wage remains 30,000 naira. Many Many families have reported having to spend their entire salaries or a little less on just food. In 2021, one night in 2021, 195.5 billion naira was approved for the feeding expenses for the two offices. When Mr. Buhari received 124 million naira, Mr. Osibajo got 71 million naira. As always, this edition was written by Yusuf Akínpẹ̀lú. I am Titi Lokbet Fodare. See you next week, and please do not forget, if you like this podcast, please share and favorite. And also visit www.premiumtimesng.com to catch the latest edition of this podcast series.